death penalty for apostasy. Where is that written, and does it really happen? So this is my second video on the subject of apostasy from Islam and the punishment for it. Apostasy means the act of leaving a religion. An apostate is a person who does this. I would like to emphasize that the approximately 1.6 billion Muslims worldwide are a very diverse group and have very different opinions on many topics. I therefore do not talk about all Muslims, but I refer to the statements of certain people as well as to the scriptures that are the basis for the Islamic faith. Unfortunately, the idea that people who leave Islam should be killed is very common. It can be found in all traditional schools of law in Islam, and the majority of Islamic scholars of our time also hold this view. There are also Islamic scholars who oppose the death penalty for apostasy, but unfortunately they are in the minority. Muslims outside of Islamic countries also often have the opinion that it would be okay to kill someone just because they left Islam. There are examples of this in my first video on this subject. The link is in the description. One of the defenders of the death penalty for apostasy is Dr. Yusuf al-Qaradawi. This al-Qaradawi is not just anyone. Have a look here. A book about the 500 most influential Muslims in 2009. Al-Qaradawi can already be seen on the cover. I made a red circle. And in the ranking list, he is number 9. Number 9 worldwide. And he also had his own show on Al Jazeera. He probably stopped doing that because he's too old now. Al-Qaradawi has written many books. The best known is The Lawful and Prohibited in Islam. This book has been translated in many languages. It was also published in German by the Islamic community in Austria as a textbook or as a guide for Islamic religion teachers at state schools in Austria. There is a subchapter on the subject of the death penalty. The author writes that Allah has mentioned 3 crimes for which the death penalty is justified. One of them is apostasy from Islam. What is actually the basis for the death penalty for apostasy? One would think that you could find it crystal clear in the Quran, as widespread as the call for the death penalty is. But wrong. One or the other verse in the Quran may be interpreted in this direction, but none is really clear. But there are some hadith that give the impression of being clear. Hadith are statements by Muhammad that can be found in very extensive collections. Here are 2 examples. According to the statement of Allah's Messenger, whoever changed his Islamic religion, then kill him. Or this one, whoever changes his religion, execute him. Does that mean that everybody who leaves Islam will be executed? No, fortunately not. But just the awareness that apostasy is a death-worthy crime has an influence on the thinking of Muslims. The legal situation is very different in many Islamic countries. In some of them, the death penalty for apostasy is part of the law. In some countries, apostates are prosecuted on the pretext of other crimes. This can be, for example, blasphemy, insurgency, causing division within society, disruption of social peace, degrading the reputation of the nation, and so on and so forth. In fact, the death penalty for apostasy is very rarely officially applied, or we are not told about it. Even so, people die simply because they have left Islam. Many a person who has been acquitted by a court of law has then been murdered in broad daylight. It is also not that uncommon for people to be murdered by family members. And if that happens in an Islamic country, the murderer is often not being punished for his crime because the victim has left Islam. Even if people are not being harmed physically, apostates also face civil law consequences in many countries. These include forced divorce, taking children away from their parents, confiscation of property by the state, loss of job, and loss of the right to inheritance. In other words, we will not kill you, but we destroy your life in a different way. An example for this is Professor Nasser Abu Zaid. He was an Islamic scholar at Al-Azhar University in Cairo. Because his view of the Quran differed from the official doctrine, he was accused of apostasy. In 1994, his marriage was declared null and void by a court of law, against the will of the two spouses. This is being justified as follows. If the man is no longer a Muslim, then his Muslim wife can no longer be married to him. There were also death threats against Professor Abu Zaid. The professor and his wife then had to leave Egypt because they wanted to stay together. It feels strange when I explain why all of this is wrong. Anyone whose moral compass works reasonably should understand this without explanations. Many Muslims who are listening to me will now think, of course, yes, I understand. Killing people is wrong, and I believe that Islam is peaceful and tolerant. Only the extremists call for the death penalty. Congratulations! You can distinguish between right and wrong. But if you are one of those who say, why, where's the problem? It's absolutely right to kill apostates. Then you should ask yourself why there are so many people who do not really like Islam. It could be because of the people who think and act like you. So here I explain it to you. There is this thing called human rights. Among those is the right to freedom of religion. We all have the right to change our religion and also to speak openly about everything. About belief and disbelief and about why we think a religion is good or bad. Freedom of religion is not a crime, but a human right. The call for the death penalty is nothing more than the call to murder. Islam simply disqualifies itself that way. Also, I'm addressing Muslims who live in Western countries. In these countries, you can live freely according to your faith, talk openly about it, and also convince people to accept Islam. You make use of your rights, such as freedom of religion and freedom of expression, like everybody else. It is unthinkable that we could threaten you, imprison or execute people who convert to Islam. Religious tolerance is the basis of our peaceful coexistence, and that is only possible if everyone actually accepts these freedoms. Al-Qaradawi tries in his book, The Lawful and Prohibited in Islam, to justify this tough stance against apostates with the following statement, quote, "No one is compelled to accept Islam, but at the same time no one is permitted to play tricks with it, as some Jews did during the Prophet's time." What? I had to read this twice. Nobody is forced to accept Islam? Really? Al-Qaradawi is not the only one who argues like this. I think that's amazing. What about the 1.6 billion or so Muslims who were born into Islam? Have they voluntarily accepted Islam at any point in their life? Clearly no. Are they then allowed to leave Islam without punishment because they have not accepted it voluntarily? No, of course not. The statement that nobody is forced to accept Islam is complete nonsense. In addition, it is also unclear why voluntarily joining a group, e.g., club, political party or religion, should mean that you cannot leave it at a later time without risking your life. Al-Qaradawi obviously also wants to create the impression that people who leave Islam do so for evil motives or at least recklessly. It does not occur to him at all that some people have good reasons to no longer believe in Islam and to renounce it. Ironically, one of these reasons is the fact that Islamic scholars and leaders call for the death penalty for apostates. Islam as the great world religion will not survive the 21st century. One of about 100 reasons for this is Muslims can no longer be stopped from leaving Islam even by the threat of the death penalty. At the very end, I have one more question. Which religion or other group of people needs death threats in order to keep its members from running away? And the next video in this series is about how Al-Qaradawi and similar people try to rationally justify the death penalty for apostasy.